Look at Nigeria. Nigeria has what the largest oil reserves in Africa. It has the most brilliant minds, not in Africa, in the world. Yeah, in the world. The proof is in the pudding. There's a small amount of Nigerians that go to the UK. Small amount of Nigerians that go to places like the Netherlands. Small amount of Nigerians that go to places in the United States. But yet, they're the best performing students. They're the first people to go to Oxford University. Every year, there's one family in the UK, they have 3 children that graduated university by the time they're 13, 14. How is that possible? Unless there's a country of brilliant minds, unless there's a culture of educational attainment and educational brilliance.
What does it mean to be a success story in a land that isn't your own? To be praised for your drive, your intellect, your resilience, but then in the same breath, to have that very praise be used as a weapon against others. To be told you're a model, but to feel the silent, creeping isolation of being a pariah. Recently, jollof rice was served at New Orleans Essence Fest, and it was a problem. Many cried out that Africans are taking over the space that other people created for themselves, especially Nigerians. This is the complex and often contradictory space occupied by the concept of the model minority.
This is the model minority myth, and it's sad you think this way. The model minority myth was first created in the 60s as a way to put Asian Americans against Black Americans and downplay the role that racism and oppression had as it related to Black people's success at that time. The worst part about the model minority myth is it doesn't just hurt Black Americans, it hurts Asian Americans as well. Let's put it into perspective. Asian American students have a 93% graduation rate from high school, right? But we didn't take into consideration the different ethnic groups that Asian American students fall under. We just put the overarching label Asian on them. And if you look at data and research, East Asian students and South Asian students typically perform the highest amongst the racial groups. But if you look at Southeast Asian Americans, typically they underperform. The countries that make up Southeast Asia are like Cambodia, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and there are a few more. If we look at no high school diploma, 34% of Laos Americans don't have a high school diploma, 38.5% of Cambodian students don't have a diploma, 39.6% of Hmong Americans don't have a high school diploma. So that's where the problem comes in. The model minority myth creates bias. And because of the model minority myth, there are so many Southeast Asian students in schools that are not getting the support and resources that they need, which ultimately means they're losing opportunities as well. That is masking the systemic challenges that Southeast Asian American people are facing. Now see, imagine if a teacher were to think like this, and that teacher had Southeast Asian American students in their class, and those students weren't doing too well because the teacher wasn't providing the support they needed, because the teacher thought, they're Asian students, they'll get it, they don't need any help. Do you see the kind of damage that is creating for them? Let's stop thinking this way.
And in the 21st century diaspora, one group is increasingly finding itself cast in this leading role: Nigerians. But is this a role they sought? And what are the hidden costs of this label? Today we are deconstructing the myth, the model minority. Are Nigerians the new model minority? The term model minority was coined in 1960s, most famously in the 1966 New York Times Magazine article titled "Success Story, Japanese American Style." It emerged at a time of immense social upheaval in the United States. The argument was simple. Here was a minority group, Asian Americans, that had faced racism, yet through hard work, strong family values, and an emphasis on education, had achieved socioeconomic success without protest, without demanding systemic change. On the surface, it sounds like a compliment, but sociologists and critics have argued that the model minority myth is a two. It does 3 destructive things. First, it homogenizes. It takes incredibly diverse groups, Chinese, Japanese, Indians, Filipinos, and flattens them into a single monolithic model of behavior, erasing unique histories, cultures, and class disparities within the group. Second, it weaponizes. It is used as a racial wedge. The narrative becomes, if they can succeed through hard work alone, why can't you? This pits minority groups against each other and is used to dismiss claims of systemic racism faced by Black and Hispanic communities. Third, it creates a pressure cooker. For those within the labeled group, it creates immense psychological pressure to live up to the stereotype while silencing struggles of mental health, poverty, or discrimination because you're supposed to be a model. The model minority isn't a genuine celebration, it is a political narrative, and now that narrative is finding a new subject. The statistical evidence for Nigerian exceptionalism, I don't really like to say this or use this, but I guess it's just something that seems like there is, and there are some data that can back it, but some people can argue that this data might be missing some sort of context. However, let's just get into the data. According to Migration Policy Institute, MPI, Nigerian immigrants in the United States are the most educated immigrant group, with 61% holding at least a bachelor degree compared to roughly 31% of total foreign-born population and 32% of United States-born individuals. Additionally, 29% of Nigerian Americans have an advanced degree, master's, PhD, or professional degree, compared to only 11% of US population overall. When it comes to income, their household incomes are significantly above the American average, often outpacing other immigrant and native-born groups. When it comes to professions, Nigerians are disproportionately represented in medicine, law, engineering, and finance. The reasons cited for the success often echo a classic modern minority trope, but with a specific Nigerian flavor: a super elite immigrant selection bias. Unlike some immigrant groups fleeing immediate conflicts, many post-Civil War Nigerian immigrants were often already highly educated or from professional classes coming for further study. They were selected for success from the start. There is also a ferocious drive for achievement. There's a culture of parental pressure and, just every Nigerian must make it. Naija no dey carry last. Personally, I was once among a Nigerian population and they were very clear to tell me that no Nigerian has failed in this particular structure that you are in right now. So you're not going to fail. Do not worry about it. But success under a modern minority myth is a double-edged sword. For every piece of praise, there is a corresponding backlash. This is where the pariah question emerges. The pariah status isn't about universally hated or being universally hated. It is about simultaneously respected and resented, admired and isolated, and now more dangerously being wielded by political pundits. Candace Owens once spoke about how it would look good if Nigerians were used to replace African Americans. It would seem like a positive enough tone to Nigerians in the diaspora, but surely it was a dog whistle. Furthermore, on the manifestation of what this modern minority myth look like or its negatives, we'll look at the black on black stereotyping. Within the broader African American or Black Caribbean communities, the arrogant, clannish, uppity, or opportunistic Nigeria is a common stereotype. The modern minority narrative fuels this tension, creative perception that Nigerians look down on other black people, believe they are better, and are unwilling to stand in solidarity against anti-black racism. The reality of Pan-African unity is often strained by these perceptions. The criminal stereotype. This is the most dangerous or damaging flip side. While other narratives praise the doctor, another demonizes the Nigerian prince scammer. The association with internet fraud known as Yahoo Yahoo has created a global stereotype that shadows law-abiding Nigerians, leading to profiling and suspicion. There's also resentment from the host society. The very success that is praised can breed resentment. They are taking our spots in universities. They are driving up property prices. They stick to themselves. These are classic xenophobic tropes now being applied to highly visible, highly successful Nigerian diaspora communities. Their success is used as a question of lack of success of others, making them a target. They become a pariah not for failing, but for succeeding too well in a way that makes others uncomfortable. The caveat, though, is that there is agency of the Nigerian diaspora. Where do they play a hand in all of this? Kemi Badenoch presents one of the most fascinating political paradoxes in modern Britain. She is a black woman of Nigerian origin who holds some of the most powerful offices in the United Kingdom government: Minister of Women and Equalities, Secretary of State for Business and Trade, and President of the Board of Trade. Yet she is the subject of intense criticism, particularly from segments of the left, anti-racism activists, and within some black and minority ethnic communities. To her supporters, she's a breath of fresh air, a meritocratic success story who rejects victimhood. To her ops, she's a deeply damaging figure whose politics and rhetoric actively harm the causes of racial and social equality she's meant to champion. For many, the criticism feels not just reasonable but justified. Olukemi Olufunto Kemi Badenoch was born in Wimbledon in 1980 to a Nigerian parent. She spent part of her childhood in Lagos and in the United States before moving or returning to the UK at 16. Before politics, she worked in a world that would define her pragmatic, business-oriented outlook, software engineering and banking. This is crucial to understanding her. She approaches government not from a framework of social theory, but from a perspective of logic, in quote, I would say, and commerce. She became a conservative MP in 2017. She was quickly promoted to junior ministerial roles, and following the resignation of Boris Johnson government in 2020, she ran for party leader, finishing fourth. Her performance raised her profile significantly, and she was retained and promoted by subsequent leaders Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. This background is key. Her supporters see her as self-made, evidence-driven pragmatist. Her critics, however, would say or argue that her tech and finance career insulated her. I would say she is very aware that the system is not built to serve her kind, but there is always one spot for the person who can look the part and will say the things that the white man doesn't even want to say in 2025. She's more aware than you all think she is, because she has been in these spaces with powerful white men and powerful people every day. Let's get back into it. She is hated for her dismissal of critical race theory and systemic racism. Badenoch is a fierce and vocal opponent of critical race theory. In the 2020 parliamentary speech, she stated the UK should be haunted by the history of slavery, but should not be guilted into repentance by those who would see us tear ourselves apart. She has consistently argued that the UK is one of the best countries in the world to be a black person, and that focusing on neo-Marxist ideas like white privilege and systemic racism is divisive, unbreathing, and counterproductive. Opponents or her ops would argue that she fundamentally misrepresents anti-racism work by lumping all of it under Americans' boogeyman, currently the CRT. They accuse her of downplaying systemic racism. She invalidates the daily experiences of millions of Britons who face discrimination in housing, employment, policing, and healthcare. Critics would say that she uses her identity as a black woman to shield her party from legitimate accusations of racism. It creates a get-out-of-jail-free card. When a black person in power says racism isn't a major structural problem, it becomes harder for others to claim otherwise without being accused of wokeness. That's the new boogeyman, right? As Equalities Minister, she has overseen the dismissal of recommendations from reports like the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities. She has criticized companies for making anti-racist pledges and championed the government's stance against divisive diversity training. For those who believe systemic racism is a real and present danger, Badenoch isn't just disagreeing. She is using her platform to actively dismantle the language and tools used to fight it. She is seen not as a difference of opinion, but as an active betrayal and a danger, hence the visceral reaction people have. Badenoch has positioned herself as a leading government figure in the war on woke. She frames wokeism as an intolerant authoritarian ideology that stifles free speech, promotes guilt, and focuses on group identity over individual merit. Critics see this as a cynical political strategy. The term woke is often used to dismiss and ridicule everything from anti-racism to environmentalism and historical acknowledgement. By leading this charge, she is seen as punching down. As a member of multiple minority groups, her attack on identity politics are seen as attacking the very mechanisms less powerful people use to seek justice, creating a culture war distraction. Many argue she is fueling divisive social debates to distract from government failures on economic issues like the cost of living crisis, which disproportionately affect the very community she claimed to represent. Beyond policy, her manner attracts criticism. She is known in Parliament for being combative, intellectually confident. Britain is not often highlighted as America because of the population, which is higher for America than it is for Britain. The British Kemi Badenoch is an archetype for who a Nigerian diaspora that is not loved by their host country look like. In fact, that is the look of the Nigerian diaspora who is a pariah home and abroad, not just in the UK. I have noted that there are two types of Nigerian diasporans: the one who had the financial resources to move out of Nigeria, and the one who had the intellectual capacity to be picked to move out of Nigeria. Both see themselves as special, and if they lack class analysis or any type of class consciousness, they buy into the narratives against the Africans who are victims of slavery and structural discriminations and look down on them. Many see Nigerians as classists inside and outside of Nigeria. Classism is a big conversation that we might actually have to get into. If you're yet to take any lectures in Africa in the diaspora history, at least know these three facts. Systemic and structural racism are real forces in the world that requires active targeted government intervention to dismantle. The government primary role is to protect the most vulnerable. Capitalism and neoliberalism have created an atmosphere where anyone who can produce benefits can be exposed, hence why we are now in blockbuster movies, and it doesn't mean that racism has ended that you see a black person on TV. So are Nigerians the new modern minority? The evidence suggests that the narrative is being applied to them with all the familiar perks and pitfalls. But the more important question is, should we be using the label at all? The modern minority myth, whether applied to Asians, Nigerians, or any other group, is a trap. It forces a diverse people into a narrow story written by others. It demands gratitude for conditional acceptance that can be withdrawn the moment you step out of line or fail to meet the model standard. It isolates you from your peers and makes your success political football. The reality of the Nigerian diaspora, like any diaspora, is one of profound complexity. It contains doctors and scammers, politicians like Kemi Badenoch and activists who oppose her, community builders and isolated individuals. It contains triumph, struggle, solidarity and tension. To reduce this vibrant, multifaceted community to either a model to be emulated or a pariah to be resented is to do them and the truth of the immigrant experience a profound disservice. The goal should not be to create a new modern minority, but to dismantle the myth entirely and allow every community to be seen not as a stereotype but in its full, complicated and human reality. And the Nigerians should continue to work to make their country better everywhere or anywhere they are in the world, because right now the world is against immigrants. It's a West initiative, but it seems like it's spreading. However, this is a complex topic that we can discuss later.